Thank you all for coming today. So my role in council is to look after council's bushland reserves and basically assign resources to them, assign the best team, what type of weeding is required, and also I assist Landcare groups that work on council land and other Landcare stuff. So next slide, please. So today we're talking about bushfire recovery. Actually, I won't be speaking much about weeds. It'll be more about native vegetation and their responses to fire. Because a lot of the regeneration that's out there happening now, and that's the table full of weeds out there, 9/10 of that table is native plants. So just because it's a perception that it's a weed doesn't mean that's the case. So after the fire, I put out this statement on council's website, and basically it just says, slow, 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 stop, stop, stop. Just observe to see what's happening here. Find out what natives you've got on the ground and weed around them basically. Retain as much veg in the system as possible. And this was taken out, what's his name? You can see there's a poor koala at the top of the scorch there. So that was Talwala Nature Reserve. Can I have the next slide, please? So in regards to native veg recovery, there's a number of factors at play. So pre-fire, what was happening there? Was your place just chockers full of lantana, even though it looked sick and dead? Was it still flowering, fruiting, whatever? So that will come into play later on down the track now in regards to what's happening. So, and definitely where the plants were in their life cycle at that time of the fire. So yeah. So also the native vegetation type that you've got on your land, where it is in the landscape. Same again, where it was in its life cycle. The densities of those native plants, were they good? Was it monoculture? Was it just a bliss of everything? The connectivity to other patches. So are you next to a national park? Are you on your own in the middle of nowhere, 5,000 hectares, and you're the little green patch? That all comes to play. Now, post-fire, native vegetation recovery types, you can either have seedlings that pop up, which everyone's noticing now coming through, or you might notice on some of your eucalypts that you've got epicormic growth at the base, or you could have corms coming out of the side. So that's what's in play as well. So also seedling types, so you can have canopy stored seeds, which is like happening here with the Banksia. So it's hanging up in the tree. Once smoke or fire comes through, it goes smash, opens itself out and drops a seed onto the bare ground, takes over. So that's what's happening there. So you probably won't have Banksias, you more have Allocasuarinas away from the coast. So also you've got soil stored. So that's what you're seeing, that flush of natives now too as well in regards to your wattles. And then you've also got imported seeds that birds, water and insects bring in. So we're still going on the recovery methods here in regards to what's happening. So that's the resprouting that I was talking about before, just a flush of new growth. So the tree's still alive, don't write it off yet. And then you might end up with like grass trees at the moment have got terminal aerial buds that are sticking up. You might have bulbs or corms or anything like that that are resprouting as well. So the other factors that are going to influence your recovery, and this is probably the number one factor, is the amount of light penetration. So pre-fire you might have had a big dense patch of lantana. It's all burnt now and you've just got 100% light burning down onto open bare patch. So, yeah.
Sorry, see if the tree's doing that that's what a lot of the trees have done, put out the shoots all the way up the trunk.
Yep.
Does that affect the stability of the tree?
No, that's...
How it will normally grow where it normally grows up top?
No, it'll grow out your normal apical growth. This is just its response to fire, so it'll return back to normal. It'll shed, and you might notice too that it'll go through a shedding process as well. So it's getting rid of all the toxins and stuff that's accumulated from the soil post-fire, and then it'll shed, and then it'll go back to normal. So
When you say shed, do you mean those parts dying?
Yep. So all that new growth there will shed, and you'll go back to normal. Yeah, and you'll notice that it won't be nice green foliage as well. It might be discoloured or a bit of grey, and that's sort of nature taking hold of itself, just saying, right, we've sucked up a bit of bad post-fire minerals and stuff like that. So definitely in your soils too, post-fire, there's a change. Most plants, the nitrates to nitrites, And all plants are basically toxic post-fire to cattle and stock. So it's just that natural uptake, the chemical imbalances in the soil, and all plants are just sucking up that nitrate instead of nitrites. So, yeah, no, one.
Trees after when it rains.
Yeah, no, that's a good system. That's just response. Sorry.
But I should know this, but the epicomic growth like that, it would feed the tree too.
Yes.
Help
Yep.
that
So it's
recover.
still getting photosynthesis. So it's gone from a tree with no leaves. We've got to put out new shoots. So normally closer to the ground. That's why most of these, and they work their way up as they go up the tree. So you'll notice that it's newer stuff at the top. So yeah, it's just got to get its life cycle back into place. Is what's happening.
Well, I have some, and they're only shooting at the base.
Yep.
There's none going up.
So that was lignotubers. So that's coming from the roots itself.
Yeah.
So if there was a root running out on the tree, it might send out shoots through there. So it'll grow, and you might end up with another eucalypt tree off that.
Yeah.
So instead of 2 trees, you'll end up with 1 tree.
So should the protective be left standing until it falls over?
It'll fall over. As long as you've got reshoots somewhere on the tree, it should be survive. Does everyone know the bracket fungus that you see on eucalypt trees? Normally that's a good indication that your tree is going to die. So if you see that bracket fungus, you know that there's something happening. It might be creating a hollow in the branch or something like that, but yeah, that's what's in place. So yeah, so it's sort of like in ironbarks, it's pretty common in regards to it's like I don't know, it's like a hamburger, big hamburgers that's stuck into the tree. It can be quite big, but yeah, so it's called.
Like an orange shelf, you know,
Yeah.
orange, and it's curved and
Like a shelf.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that means that the fungus is inside the main growing system of the tree. So, yep. So another key factor is the moisture holding capability of the soil post-fire and how much organic material was burnt. So if you're back to bare soil, or for instance us at the beach at Harrington, we're back to bare sand. So where we had rainforest on the backside, now we've actually got to plant frontal dune species on the back dune where the rainforest was because there's no soil, so we've got to create our own soil. Next slide, please. So this has been touched on before today too in regards to the condition of the fungi too in the ground in regards to some fungi like long periods of wet, some can survive dry. And the main thing is fertiliser. Do not apply fertiliser around trees that you want to keep if they've got fungi showing. That's just burns it off basically. So this is a good indication post-fire. This is what I'm talking about. The leaves have they've gone through and then they've shed, and then the fungi itself is feeding on a bit of roots and stuff like that. So that's happening well. So another key factor here is the soil organisms that's been touched on today in regards to that association with the fungus and the little microbes and all that sort of system that's at play. So that will determine on how quick you will recover as well. And the last one there is overabundant herbivores. So there's been a bit of, a lot of orchids found this season post-fire in regards to a lot of the kangaroos have moved more up into the high country and not feeding down on the lower country. So normally the kangaroos and stuff like that will pitch off a lot of the young orchids because it's like a soft, yummy little piece of treat for them, like a jelly bean. And this year, because they've been moved back to the fire, back into the bush, that there's been a lot of orchids. So that's going to influence your blend of vegetation that you get.
Excuse me, is that a good fungi?
Not sure on that one, I couldn't find it in any book or anything. So that's on a forest oak, and it was definitely after that first rain post-fire, and everyone's going, what is that fungus that's happening there? I would say that there's no organic material left in the soil there. So there was a lot of peat growing in all this, where all you got a bit of white ash there. So I think what's happened there is there's no organic material for the fungus to there. There was probably still spores, so it's just attached itself to the bark and then it's got its life cycle, drop down and go through it again. That's my presumption on what's happening there. Next slide, please. So with your post-fire planning is prioritisation in regards to your block. So this is a block that was at Miss Carey's Trail at Kai Warwick Is that right? Is that how you guys say it? Kaiwarik, yep. So 206 hectares, entire site was burnt. There was rainforest in all the gullies and stuff like that. So in regards to what we did there is the red is priority, the yellow is next, and the green dots is what you would do as a third. So primary, secondary, tertiary. So why these were picked in red, basically you can see here there's been disturbance. This is all lantana at the top and there. This one here, you've got neighbours that run in through there that's all full of lantana, so definitely check your gullies and stuff like that, feeding from your neighbours. And then the green ones are just, they were more intact post the fire. So with the site recovery, what you want to do is you need to observe what's doing well, what's poorly, and what weeds have gone ballistic. So what have you not noticed before that's just covering, smothering, whatever. So get it ID'd. Is it a native, is it a weed? So another thing is to tread lightly. So don't back your slasher into it and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of small stuff there that's going to save you lots and lots of time that needs to have the potential to get up there and block the light and to re-establish everything. So hidden amongst all those annuals and the exotic grasses and vines are native plants. So as I said before there, make realistic outcomes, break the site into work lines, gullies and stuff like that. Next please.
Anthony, I'm going to call you Andrew all that.
That's all right.
How were you working with that landholder?
Yep, so they've just signed up, well they were just about to sign up with a biodiversity conservation agreement. It's just, they were unsure in regards to the whole 206 hectares was burnt, the whole lot. So they were just saying, well, where do we start, what do we do? So based on previous history, as I said, that lantana was in here, so same with here, you've got two gullies that feed into one. This yellow patch here was it was an old... Yeah.
Does council do that for landholders?
This was as part of Land for Wildlife.
Oh, part of Land for Wildlife?
Yep. Yep. Target your sites based on your plant community. So your riparian zones, definitely target those first in regards to that. Get them established first. So your weeping lily prairie forest in a riparian zone, try and get that intact first. So also prioritise on the weed condition and its life cycle. Again, try and treat weeds before they set seeds. So even if you've got annuals in the creek bed and stuff like that, just try and chop the heads off them so that they don't get another seed, it doesn't get stuck back into the seed bank. So where you have natives regenerating and you've got vines and stuff that are competing and overhanging, so cut those off too as well. And another thing too, if you've got any threatened species on your site, prioritise that as well, if it's known. Next slide. Another thing to do is target areas where you've got canopy developing. So as discussed before, you can see here we've got new shoots happening its way up the tree. Light penetration is going to be critical in regards to controlling your weeds. So if you can shut that down by establishing a canopy as quick as possible, that's going to be very helpful. And then when you are assisting that there, please note what you've got in regards to wattles, kangaroo vine. Do you have those pioneers there? If you've just got slow growing stuff that's coming back up, you may need to plant into that to get that canopy back up and down. Next slide, please. So this is the best that I could find in regards to what's happened in regards to fire. You're going through a secondary succession, so that was us at the start, fire. And then here you may notice that we're probably at this stage here where you're getting weeds and other stuff that you haven't noticed before come back up through. And then that will remain for a fair period before you get back to your normal situation. So most people will be at this stage where there's stuff that hasn't been seen before that's coming up, and you might notice that there's a few other pioneers and mature species that are coming up that aren't known or you haven't seen before, but don't be scared. It could be just part of the system restoring itself. All right, let's talk about weeds. So unfortunately, your Biosecurity Act obligations still remain, so you still have to treat your old noxious weeds as well. So there's no caveat or anything like that.
It could actually monitors that because, you know, fire rate has gone absolutely ballistic after the fires.
Yep.
I'm trying to pull it out by hand because you're, you know, organically. And all the neighbouring properties or even going up on the Lakescape or Diamond Beach Road or anything like that, it's just no one else's.
Yeah, it's all about the priority, the hierarchy of weeds in regards to which are the most invasive and which ones that we do have the capacity to control. Whereas fireweed at the moment is just widespread. Basically, everyone was in drought condition at the fire. There was a fair bit of, well, it was 18 months worth of drought leading up to that fire. So there's about 2-3 life cycles of fireweed down into the soil, and we've just released that. So there's no way that we could probably target that. So that's why not the weeds officers are sort of looking at tropical soda apple and stuff that they can eradicate post-fire rather than treating something that's already widespread in the landscape. So it's more...
Isn't a seed 15 years or something life cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fireweed specifically, they found it 40,000 feet in the atmosphere. So even if we're treating it in our area,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we're not putting any resources to it. It's land management. So yeah. So funnily enough, today I thought we'd have lots of people bringing in white passion fruit, and no one brought in white passion fruit because it's widespread throughout most areas that have been burnt. It's probably the #1 vine that you want to get rid of. Possums spread it too as well. So it just looks like a passion fruit. You can't eat it. It tastes like shit. It really does. When you crush the leaves, it smells, it stinks, so it's a pretty good indication. It's not your black Ned Kelly passion fruit. So if you do have it, you don't have to...
Actually just look like a passion fruit?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yep.
haven't got any in advance, but yes, I do have some.
Yeah. When you pull the vine, you'll notice it'll stink. So basically, if you've got native trees and it's started to go up it, please pull it down.
They're
Yep.
all still stunted.
Yeah. So on the other hand, so weeds do offer soil stabilisation. So the other thing is they develop soil. So we're working from ground zero now in regards to we've got no soil. So possibly leave them intact, just stop them from spreading in regards to cut the heads off them if you can. Just stop that thing. The other thing, they provide food and habitat for wildlife. They provide nectar for butterflies, attract pollinators and shelters. So after that, your transformer weeds should probably be targeted. So they're like your lantanas, your privets and stuff like that. So and stuff that if you let it go, it will take over the native vegetation. All right. So which weeds to treat first? So as I said before, those ones that are stopping regeneration. So species that you haven't seen before. So your inkweed, and then consolidate your edges and drip lines. And many of your annual grasses and stuff like that, you can shade them out over time, so don't waste time treating them now. Just keep them in the system, at least you've got a cover of organic material and go from there. So that's a native vine. That's a native Calistigia in Deans Creek that's just gone ballistic post-fire. So with that there, we're just leaving it at the moment because what that's doing is there's a whole colony of pioneers underneath, and it's providing a western wind sunbreak in regards to it'll allow those natives to get up. Once they get up to probably my height, we'll then give that a haircut. So it's just responding to fire. So the first to the canopy wins, basically. Another thing people tend to use, you can see here, tobacco bush. Lots of people like to get rid of it. But you can see that there's 1, 2, 3 species of native growing underneath it, as well as the lantana. Tobacco bush is relatively easy to kill. If you've got nothing else in the landscape, leave it, let your natives get up to a certain high, and then just put a chainsaw through it. If you've got castor oil plant, it looks a lit like thing, I'd get rid of it out of the system as well. Take all the seeds away, take them to the dump, whatever, don't leave them there. Post-fire now too, if you had Crofton weed and blue billy goat weed, I'd be getting rid of it now too, because if we've got a lot of bare soil, and if there's going to be moist this season, now they're predicting it's going to be everywhere. So in regards to trying to get that natural system back into place, a lot of people want to plant and try and get it back to normal as quick as possible. So I would recommend that you use it as a last resort, and if you do, just work along your peripheral edges and those drip lines of trees, and then try and infill, and probably don't try and introduce stuff that was not already there. So don't try and bring a Western New South Wales eucalypt in and plant as well. Stick to local if you can. What are other things you can do? You can leave woody debris in the creek line to retain water. Also, it adds like a physical barrier. So if you've got weed seeds that are coming down the creek line, if you've got lots of trash and rubble and stuff in there, you're sort of stopping the weed spreading from down the whole creek line. You're stopping it at a point. So it's easier to treat than 1 kilometre than 5 kilometres of your creek line. Another thing that we did was install, as Erin said this morning, we put water stations out everywhere and food stations, and then we would pull them back out over time. We did a fair bit of camera monitoring in regards to what species. We put cameras on all the water stations so we knew what was coming in. Got lots of koalas that we knew that we didn't know were in the system as well. And then the other thing to do is feral animal control, if you can, in regards to a lot of open spaces, a lot of foxes moving in. I think the time limit between once you shoot a fox or remove a fox out of the system, it's 6 weeks before another one moves in. So it's pretty critical to get rid of that, otherwise you lose your animals in the system. And then keep on touch with what's happening in the system in regards to what's weeds are coming up, what's natives, and be willing to adapt. Just don't stick to the same system over and over again. And they're all the links that I've provided.
And they'll all be on the website when I fix the website.
So a lot of those are... So this little booklet, which is most of our weeds in the district, which you can't get a hard copy anymore, that's another one. Indigenous plants of Taree, so that's another good one as well. And another good, which is handed out today too, is this Know Your Native, Know Your Weeds. Definitely a good resource. Any questions?
All those weeds out there, have they been introduced?
Yes.
If they're weeds, but a lot of the things on those tables are actually natives.
Yeah, most of the stuff that's out there, like there's only probably...
Brought in by sort of thinking they're weed, because they're
Yep.
growing in a weedy form. But when it identified the species, essentially a native species.
So weed is just basically the plant that's out of place. So my interpretation of that and your interpretation is going to be different. So to me, a weed is something that was not native to Australia, and that's how I'm treating it. So if it was introduced to Australia for agriculture, ornamental or whatever, that's how I treat it.
But things like Landcare, which is what came from South Africa.
Yep.
And it's a terrible. What's its purpose?
It was a hedge, ornamental hedge.
Yeah, there's just dumb shit in it.
Yep.
There's some nurseries who still sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. So of concern, like we've got red lantana coming over from Kempsey at the moment, so it's sort of...
It's the bad stuff.
It's really toxic to cattle. Like our cattle here can tolerate a bit of eating pink lantana, but red stuff is just dead. So we're focusing our energy on doing stuff like that, so stopping stuff coming from our north that we know is highly toxic. We can sort of make a barrier line, and that's why we're focusing and working with Port Macquarie Council on stopping that front. But yet it's coming from the south down at Clarencetown now, so we're sort of it's coming from both borders, so watch the space. So when I... Yeah, so for instance, I've got a place up top of the Hastings, and my grandfather bought hay from Tamworth back in '88 or something, and in came with it a bit of Cape Ivy. I'd never had Cape Ivy on the place, and this year, guess what came back? It's come back up.
From drought and
Yeah, so I'd had it controlled. I thought I'd never see it again back in 2012, and it's turned up again. So yeah.
Sorry, just again with the fire, we've lost our grandpa.
Yep.
But it's also all that understory past that rainbow fire.
Yep.
So we mostly have our big guns,
Mhm.
mostly in some
Yes.
Not protected though, like it's not protecting really anything lower.
No, but it's still retaining moisture in this.
Leave it, or
Yep.
because again you go, that's another fire hazard.
Mm,
There's all this dead stuff hanging around.
yeah, can we go to I've got some more slides. So go back. So something like this is like a creek line out Deans Creek. So this is post-fire, it went through, burned everything. So all of that is just crap weeds. So because it's in the creek line, we're going to leave that in regards to it's going to retain the soil. So what we're going to do, see this little thing here, little poison peach. So we're just going to hand weed around that and let that get up and eventually shade out that whole thing.
I'm talking bigger dead stuff.
Yep.
Like, just hangs around like this, and it's actually really depressing to look at because it's all dead.
You can, if you wanted to, like fall it into the creek, leave it into the creek. So leave structure into the creek.
I've done with a lot of that,
Yep.
but
It's going to be untidy for quite a few years.
yeah.
You're not going to get back.
It's like, are we better to get rid of it or like leave some for like habitat, or is it better to leave the root system in?
Yep.
Cut the upper bit.
Yep.
Yeah. What?
So worst case scenario, so this is the fleabane here, so it's going to set seed, and then you've got purple top up through here. So this is going to probably go to seed first. It's just about to burst down to. So here, if you're concerned about that, you just run a hand scythe through and just chop the top off, or brush cut.
I'm not talking about that. That's the ground.
All right, you're talking about.
I'm talking about the crap.
Dead
Not eucalypt. So it's like in the creek area, they were some of them. I've got photos.
Yep.
They're just.
Like, would you have had like water guns and cheese trees and lily leaves?
Yeah.
And they're all dead. It's just like all these dead people hanging around.
They're providing
That's
habitat
what
right
it's
now.
like.
Yeah.
They're providing habitat right now, and what they're also doing is providing perch points for birds to land.
Yep.
And the birds will poop out mid-story seeds.
Yeah.
So every part of me wants to say leave them as is, unless they are a safety hazard.
Yep.
Then by all means trim it down, make it safe. But there'll be little hollows in there. Hollows don't need to be big enough for a possum. They can be big enough for a microbat.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be animals using them.
Yep.
And yeah, they will be providing habitat and providing a shade, even if it's just a dead trunk, it's providing some shade
Yep.
to let understories happen.
And you may get a native vine that wants to scramble itself up over the top. So, and then that'll provide shade for your stuff underneath to come up at a later stage. So I'd probably retain as much as you can.
Unless
That's
it
what I
comes
want
to
to answer.
All right, sorry.
Is different.
Yep.
It will be different for a long time to come.
Yep.
But it gradually
Can I have another slide, please? So this is typical, this is the native hibiscus. So obviously there was a mature tree there, and you've got like a couple of hundred in there. So that'll sort itself out. Don't be worried that you have to go in there and thin that out in regards to the most dominant one there is going to win, and all the rest will die out. So you might end up, that's nature doing its thing. So kind of the next slide. So yeah, in that I just had a bit of a zoom through there. You've got hibiscus, lily pilly, and acronychia, and there's one inkweed in through the bottom of that. So that's all you'd go in through there and target that inkweed, get rid of that, and let nature take its course.
What sort of weed?
Inkweed. So we've got some out there, yep. That's the native kangaroo apple someone bought in today. It's everywhere too as well. It's a native, it'll only get to a certain stage. Your brown pigeons will come in and move that around so that next time we have disturbance or an edge effect happens, it'll be there as a coloniser. That's a couple of native vines there. This is what I'm talking about over a dead structure. It's just starting to take over here. So there's two vines there. There's kangaroo vine, that one there, and that's the native Discoria, and that's a Calistigia. So they're all there doing that thing. So if they were get to the stage where they're actually pulling down trees or stopping, actually smothering the tree so the tree doesn't have any vegetation out to what's his name, we'd prune that at head height. Just cut it off. Don't poison it or do anything like that. Just let it put on the ground and it'll go back through the cycle again. Just get that tree back to... Kangaroo vines, that one.
Oh, so cissus.
Yep, cissus. Yep, sorry. I'm using common names today. Can we have another slide? So that's another pioneer, hairy clerodendron, good toilet paper if you're stuck out in the bush. That's all right. So that's a native yam. It's just starting to put its fruit on now. It's coming up. That's your kangaroo apple again. People brought that in today as well as a weed. So it's called Indian weed, but it's a native. So it's a good coloniser of edges and gaps and stuff like that. People brought in today blackberry nightshade too. So it's blending in there well with another native as well. Next. Yeah, yep. So that was brought in today too. That's another fleabane. So it's easy to pull, and the beauty of it, it's normally about that high, so you can just go along.
So we're not leaving that.
That's the purple top in the young woolly stage. So square stems. Purple top's in the same family as lantana, so it's got square stems. Tobacco bush. I'll leave it up to you whether you keep it or retain it. If there's nothing else in the system, I'd keep it.
But those weeds, if they're not in seed,
Leave them.
leave them on the ground. Or, you know,
Yep.
there's plenty, if there happens to be enough under there, maybe put it somewhere where there isn't. Use them.
Yep, so that's my presentation done, guys. Thank you.